Yeah, I just think that's such a great example of like when you plant a seed and like I'm a Christian, I believe in God, and then God he'll bring the increase. You water it, you plant it, God will bring the increase. And like I feel like that's so evident in your life, just how like God has really just taken those seeds, those little risks that you took, the yes that you said, even though you weren't sure, and he just grew it. And I'm like, wow, I get to see you do that. And it's just so great. And that just reminds me of like, you can even talk more to this. I remember the speech that you gave during 2 years ago, the Christmas show for Broadway Inspirational Voices.
Ah,
And
yes.
you talked about how you were in like a dark place, and then like you got that call that like you were Tony honored, and like how that just reminded you of like oh yes, actually. So yeah, just tell us about that
Yeah.
too.
Well, honors and awards and things like that are wonderful, but you can't do your work hoping for them, right? You can't do it with that expectation. That's the result of something, and your worth as an artist can never be, you can never put that in anybody else's hands. Meaning, even in an audition situation, you go and you do your work, you share your joy of what you do, and you have to leave it there. But your worth as an artist cannot be wrapped up in whether or not someone gives you a job or an award or anything else, because then you're at the mercy of other people's likes and dislikes, which we know can change in a second, right? But that said, 25 years of BIV, it was just so interesting that the Tony Honor came at a time where I was in an emotionally low place, where there had been circumstances and situations that were shifting that valley of preparation. And this was a deep valley. It was a valley where I couldn't even see the mountains on the other side. There was just valley as far as the eye could see, valley. And I was really, I'm a person of faith. I'm a person that has strong faith and belief in God. And in my daily conversations, which I have daily, I was not happy with the way God was handling things. And I was very clear about that in
That's
my daily
real.
conversations.
That's
I'm like, how long do I have to be in this space? Because
real.
I can't take this much longer. And those were legitimate conversations that I was grappling with. So to be in that space and at that time have that phone call come saying that we had been given this honor, first it made me laugh because I'm like, God, you have a very funny sense of humor. You know what I mean? And then, and of course there were tears and all of that, but there are certain moments where it wasn't about the award per se, but it was about the message in the award was what I needed to hear in that moment. In that moment, if we're going with the idea that, our lives are divinely ordered and that for me, God is in every part of every experience, me getting that honor on behalf of BIV in that moment was acknowledgement for the 25 years of work that I did, that someone saw it in that moment and felt it was worthy of saying, we see you and you're on the right path because we're acknowledging what you've been doing, right? That's how I received it. So it wasn't about me being good or this or that. It was about, in that moment, someone taking a second, just like we can do for each other, in a moment to look at your friend and say, hey, I see you today, you okay? Or, hey, I see you, and here, I'm bringing by some food, or I'm bringing some soup by, or, hey, here's $20, I just was thinking about you, or hey, you're on my mind today, let's go have coffee. It's the same thing. It's that moment of graciousness and gratitude and gifting somebody with something that says, I see you in this moment. And I want to acknowledge that and celebrate you. And that can be, like I said, a call, a text, a card, or it can be a Tony honor. You know what I mean? But in that moment, it was just an acknowledgement that what I had been doing was seen. And that was nice to have.
Yeah, even right now, I'm like, hold it together, Naomi. And hearing it that day is just like, because sometimes we see people who are like Michael McElroy, and we see the name, and we see you, like me, like I'm younger than you. I'm trying to, build up this career, and we see you, and we oh, it must be like all mountaintops for you. So just hearing that story and like hearing how like even when you think someone's somewhere, like they might not be, and just hearing how like you got that phone call and something like you said, like as simple as that, like changed, like it just made you felt so seen. And that was so good to hear, just to know like, you know, even when we do reach some point in our careers, like it's still like those little things. It's still like there are still going to be mountains and valleys. It's not just like, oh, I'm here and I'm staying here. So that's like so great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And lastly, like here at Student Dream, you know, we want to celebrate Black History Month. We want to celebrate Black history, past, present, and future. And I totally feel like you are like future, present, past. Like you are, I'm just so happy that you're here. But I wanted to ask you, like, what are three pieces of like Black art in any medium that you feel like every artist, especially Black artists, should know about? You know, like what has inspired you, or what have you seen and you're like, you know how you said like you saw that need and it just like, oh, what is something that you just felt like, you just felt that on the
Mhm.
inside?
Oh, there's so many, and I'm trying to think in this moment. I have one that just came right away. One that came right away was Alvin Ailey, Revelations. I
Mhm.
mean, just life changing for me, absolutely life changing. Um, trying to think. I'm trying to think in terms of, I've been doing a lot of work in looking at history.
Mhm.
Um, what we should always know is the Harlem Renaissance. And those artists, the Ella Fitzgeralds, the Claude McKays, the Langston Hughes, the Sarah Vaughns, the Duke Ellington, the Cab Calloway, the Nicholas Brothers, the Lena Hornes, all of those people were in one freaking place
Yup.
in one time, mind-boggling all that talent. In the midst of so many, we were just studying it in class yesterday. You know, here we have in one era, Duke Ellington was and the Duke Ellington Orchestra was the house band at the Cotton Club. You had Ethel Waters, you had the Nicholas Brothers, you had Lena Horne, you had Dorothy Dandridge, you had Cab Calloway, you had all these artists. And then you had an environment where people who looked like them couldn't even go there, right? And you had them, the decoration was a plantation theme. And at every turn, the way they framed them, the narrative was jungle music or this jungle theme and this jungle dress and da da da, you know, all these things to make what they were doing, which was so amazing, smaller, so that people could wrap their minds around this transformative, unbelievable art form that was being created and blown open through Black experience, right? And through Black art and Black mastery of craft, right? All that is happening, but they're trying to make it smaller so that people could, so it could be palatable, so we don't think, oh, these people are something extraordinary, right? But I had an epiphany yesterday in class as we were discussing it. I was like, isn't it interesting? We don't remember the name of the person who ran the Cotton Club, but we remember Duke Ellington. We remember his music.
Yes,
We
we do.
remember Lena Horne. Remember the Nicholas Brothers, right? So the main people who were always trying to limit the art, the craft, the mastery, the unbelievable gift that is, still survives. And now is looked at as something as incredible as it was then. It's even more incredible now, right? So I think the Harlem Renaissance is something that we should always look at. I saw, I'm just trying to think. I saw Jesse Norman and Kathleen Battle do a concert of spirituals. And I want to say it was at Carnegie Hall, though it might not be. You can see it, it's on YouTube. And watching these two women sing this music, it was like, I was blown, I was like, I went down the YouTube rabbit hole. I
Yeah.
went down the rabbit hole and
Yeah.
I was like, I could not, I was just amazed at the artistry that these women, you know, and even within the classical field where there's still a lot of stigma around people of color in that field and how we can or cannot do that art form, right? So I mean, those are three things that I would say that just come right to mind. And then, I love gospel music. So anything with gospel music, that's just my home. But also this understanding that the music of the enslaved is the actual seed from which all American music comes from. All of it comes from the Black community. So you get, spirituals that lead to the classic blues and country blues and ragtime and blues and jazz, and then rock and roll and folk and bebop and gospel. All of it comes from there. All of it comes from there. And so if any advice I would say is know your history. We have not been taught our history. Our history has been erased at every turn, or minimalized, or made to be somehow made smaller so that it is palatable to push forward a narrative that we are less than. Exactly. Go do your research. Look at that history and you'll see that it was Black artists at every turn creating, developing, and moving that form forward in every aspect, whether it was music, dance, singing, science, art, writing. Know your history, because in knowing your history, you know your value. And that's important.
Yes. Yes. Yes, knowing your history is too important, especially since we get this whitewashed view of history, like you're saying, and we get a very specific role in history,
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so terrible. And like you're saying, like when you know your history, you're like,
that's not me. That's not me.
Exactly. And then when you know your real history, you're like, that's where you see so much value. And it's so, like, I was watching something on YouTube the other day, and it was just saying how, like, Black people should not be afraid to be great, just because of, like, especially when we came to this country, like, we weren't even allowed to have, like, a real name. So, like, the importance of just having a name live on, those names that you said that we remember today, like that is just so important, because it's wild that people weren't even allowed to have a name, like their name. So now that we get to know these great people and we get to see them in their light, and we have resources now where we can look up history and stuff. There's like no excuse, y'all. Do your research, learn about yourself. You will not regret it, because you just get such a different sense of self. Because like I said, like so many times we're given some roles in history that are just not true. And so I'm so happy that you shed light on that, because especially as artists and how we've been viewed in art, is just beyond.
Well, when you talk about, just quickly, when I was doing some research on some of the West African cultures and communities where West Africans were pulled from and enslaved, in some of those cultures, the naming of a child took up to a year, right? Because there was such care and intentionality put into the naming of a child. So you can imagine what it was to have that name taken from you. All of those things were incredibly intentional, right? And the way and yet we not only survived, we thrived. We found a way in one way was through our art, through our music, through our dance, to take our spirits and untether them from the realities that we're in, so that they could soar through the music, soar through the dance, soar through the writing. All of that stuff, those skill sets, those things that they were in our memory, they were in our DNA. So as many things that were taken to try to belittle us and make us smaller and make us less than, we had all the things in us to say, no, I know how to survive this, and not only survive, but I'm going to thrive.
Amen. 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 We're just gonna end it there, y'all. Make sure that you soar, and remember that you are your superpower, that you have generations inside of you.
Yes.
Generations of excellence within you. And live with that excellence, move with that excellence, knowing that it's there. Do not let messages from around you, do not let people around you, do not let anything around you dull the light that has been placed within you. And Michael, I'm so grateful that we get to experience and learn from the light that you are and the light that you've brought to this world. I am honestly just floored that I get to know you, floored that you're here. And yes, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for watching. Bye.
Bye.